Welcome to the Meltzone Podcast. This is episode 39 from October 5th, 2020. I'm Tom.
And I'm Stefan.
And I'm Gina.
And today we are three Germans making an English podcast. Besides Gina and her OctoPrint project, which we are a little bit going to talk about, we'll also just have a short conversation about Formnext finally being cancelled and now being an online event, and what other online events like the virtual Rep Festival coming weekend might look like. And also something changed with Fusion 360. So the personal license will now include step export, and it won't be left out with the new license changes.
And obviously, since we have Gina on the show, on the podcast today, we also talk about OctoPrint. How do you manage an open source project? How do you find funding for it? How do you manage your personal interests in what the program should do and what the community wants? And how do you balance your life and work as a self-employed person? All that and more in this episode. And yeah, today we're not just two, we're three. We've got Stefan, we've got myself, and we have Gina Häußge. Is it first of all, is it Gina or is it Gina?
It's Gina.
It's Gina. Okay. So for those 2.5 people that don't know who you are, can you just give us a quick 2-minute rundown of what's up with you?
Well, I'm probably best known for being the main developer and also creator of OctoPrint, which maybe you might have heard of. Yeah, I'm also a total nerd and a hobby baker. So yeah, I think that sums it up fairly nicely.
Hobby bakery, that sounds interesting.
Yeah, I just actually pulled out another bread yesterday out of my oven. So, and I have to add, this is not a pandemic thing. I did this way before everyone else started doing it at the start of lockdown. So
really nice sourdough bread with just having this piece of, I don't know, big mountain of bacteria that is always growing in your kitchen.
I do have a sourdough culture, but that one actually was a yeast-based bread with a bit of yogurt put into it for some extra soreness. So
cool.
There are multiple ways to make really great bread even without sourdough. You just have to get a bit creative and try out new recipes. So
well, cooking is also making, so kind of nicely fits together.
Exactly.
Yeah, and for those in the US watching, your bread is not what we call bread. Bread, just look up pictures of really nice, crusty, steamy bread. That's what we call bread. Because if you're in the States, you get this soft, fluffy, over-processed, sweetened
brioche.
Yes, white.
Yeah, that's not bread.
No.
That's toast, maybe, but not bread.
Yeah. And since we've already started offending the Americans, I guess that's a perfect time to move on. Right. I think let's just do a couple news, a couple follow-ups of what we were talking about the last couple times. I think the first one is Formnext, and Gina, for you, Formnext has been a bit of a home run. Where what's it called? Heimspiel.
Yep.
Are you sad that it's going to be an online only event this year?
Not really, I gotta admit, because Formnext for me was more like, so far it was a very, very prosumer-oriented event. It was only last year that I actually managed. Oh no, the year before I also ran into Stefan. But apart from that, the past couple of years it was always just big corporations, not really a lot of maker stuff that I'm interested in. The one or other OctoPrint interface looking at me, but the people not recognizing me at all. So yeah, I mean, I actually am more sad about Congress being a virtual event this year, so Chaos Communication Congress, even though it's a completely understandable and sensible decision. And of course, also all the maker-centric stuff that was moved online. So on the coming weekend, we are looking at Verve, which I'm also partaking in. So yeah. I'm more sad about these things. Formnext, yeah, well, I mean, it's 20 minutes for me by train from home. So that's like, if I can, if I have the chance, then I go for a day just to take a look and meet people. But I prefer the more maker friendly, more homey kind of events over this huge corporate stuff.
I actually haven't really informed myself, but how does a virtual expo actually look like? So how, I don't know, Formnext is going to be a virtual event. All of the other big expos are also going to be kind of virtual, but how does that actually look like? Is there like a virtual lobby where you can just click on specific exhibitors and then, I don't know, just take a look what they have? Can you interact with them? How does Verve actually work?
So Verve will have an exhibitor video stream where you can schedule some time and then present your stuff and interact with people via the Discord server that they created for the event specifically. And that's also where I will have a small 7-minute talk slot. I don't know how Formnext does it. As far as I know, Gamescom, for example, who also went all virtual this year, did it with some moderated video program broadcast stuff and did it like that. So I guess it's not really the same, but things being as they are, we have to make do with what we have, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, I think the big part or the big advantage of having a show in a physical space is you can just walk through the hall and just, you know, take a look left and right and just see what's on there. And with just a curated video stream, just a single stream where everyone gets like a 5 or 10 minute slot, I think you kind of lose that because you actually have to stick through the entire stream. There are solutions that I've seen where it's more like the booth experience, where you have basically an overview of all the exhibitors, and then you can join a private room, or first I think a semi-public room where everyone can join, and basically you're walking up to the booth, and then you can break out into different rooms with just the exhibitor and you, if you want to make business deals or whatever. I think that could work, but we're not set up for this yet. Those technical solutions aren't there and polished yet, I think.
Yeah, it's really going to be interesting, especially since, I don't know, it's just something totally different than just browsing around. But I don't know, how can I actually join Verve next weekend?
How much are tickets?
Free. The thing is, I don't actually know if you need the tickets, but they set up an Eventbrite. I think it was an Eventbrite or something, and they also published the schedule now. And I'm not yet sure if they have published the links to the video rooms yet, but there is stuff going on, and I also still need to retweet some of that. I haven't gotten around to it yet on the OctoPrint account. I think most people don't even know that I'll be there unless they have taken a look at the overview already and seen my name pop up there. But it's so much going on right now, all the time.
Yeah, sure feels like it. Yeah, time is rushing by.
It's like, wasn't it just, I don't know, May yesterday, and now we have October, and I have no idea where all the time went.
Yeah, but so you were also not really, you didn't get bored during the lockdown and all of that stuff happening? Was it actually really the way around, that you had more work?
It was completely the opposite. So every time that during the peak times in Germany with lockdown, where I constantly saw tweets scroll past me going like, now that you have so much time, why not pick up a new skill? And every day seeing that, I got more and more irritated at that, because my work was exploding at the time. Everyone was having time to spend with their 3D printers, was having time to diagnose problems with their 3D printers, was having time to write support topics on the community forums, or to join the OctoPrint Discord server and ask stuff there. Everyone was printing PPE. So it was an absolute, April and May was absolute nuts. So nuts, in fact, that I had to just stop at some point and say, okay, I cannot keep up with this. I cannot stay in crunch time for the whole pandemic. So I just have to dial it down to sustainable levels again, because I was pulling like 10-hour days every day and the weekends as well and such. And yeah.
We were seeing pretty much the same thing on YouTube as well. I mean, a view doesn't create extra work for us, but I think there are official YouTube numbers for this, I think, where it was, I think, 2.5 times the regular amount of views that he got during the first, couple of weeks or months of lockdown. So just by keeping uploading the same stuff, people were just watching more YouTube and were watching our stuff as well, which is 3D printing. And I guess that's where, where you see the interest coming up.
Yeah. But I also saw, I have this anonymous usage tracking plugin in OctoPrint, which is opt-in. But at least ever since I put this in, I now get some usage numbers, because before that I was flying completely blind. Yeah. And looking at the total numbers of unique instances per 30-day window, per 60-day window, before lockdown, that was like 60,000, 70,000. And with lockdown, it started to hover around 100,000. So that was like, okay, cool.
Obviously lots of people using it for PPE, and not just using 3D printers, but OctoPrint specifically to manage their print farms.
Yeah.
But is this actually something that's still continuing, or do you see that at least the print hours drop off again with people, well, at least here in Germany, not printing that much PPE anymore?
The print hours have dropped down again. The users haven't. So they are apparently here to stay, which on the one hand is great, but on the other hand, I mean, it's still mostly done only by me, and I'm only one person. So yeah, I only scale so much.
But okay, I think this is a perfect time to move to the next topic. Aren't you glad that you have so many beta testers just trying out your software for free and just verifying that everything works? Because that was one of the arguments that was brought up with Fusion 360 when they decided to clamp down on the features that the free version was getting. People were saying, oh, we've spent so many hundreds of hours beta testing the software for Autodesk, and now they're taking it away from us. They should just be glad that they had the users. Is that something that you're also seeing in OctoPrint? Are you very thankful for the free testing?
First of all, no. So I take offense to this whole phrasing or this whole angle. So from my personal point of view, I'm obviously glad that I can help people with what I do. But that doesn't mean that I have to be grateful for them using my stuff that I give them for free. And the same holds, in my opinion, true for the whole Fusion 360 debacle. I saw so many people completely upset about that, like, oh no, how can they do that? And those evil people, and how dare they try to make a profit of the product that they developed there. And I mean, I get it. I wasn't happy to about these limitations either, but then again, it's their product. They can do with it whatever they want, and it's if I get something for free, I am in absolutely no position at all to demand anything about that. And this is also something that a lot of people do not get about OctoPrint. I had some people come in and write feature requests and like threatening to leave if I do not implement something like yesterday, and I'm like, how is this a threat?
Yeah.
How is it supposed to make me do anything? If you ask nicely, I'm always happy to accommodate however I can. But if you behave like a you know what, then, well, good luck with that. And yeah, personally, I just see the whole Fusion 360 thing as a chance to finally get off my own butt and try new stuff that I so far, did not have the motivation to work myself into, because Fusion was there and I knew how to use it and everything was fine with that, and it could do everything that I wanted and needed it to. And so why switch? And now I was just like, no step export anymore. I know they rolled back on that, but at the beginning they still had this on the agenda, and I was like, perfect. Finally a good external motivation to try something else.
Yeah, and just to cover that news topic real quick, so we get that bullet point off the list. Step Export is staying in Fusion 360 after backlash from the community. Yes. Okay, Stefan, go ahead.
So you actually are in the process of changing to FreeCAD, or are actually trying out FreeCAD and trying it out. What's your experience with it? I have never tried it out so far. I actually just only worked with professional CAD software. How does it compare?
It's obviously not as polished. I mean, you have to look at it. It's primarily done, as far as I understood, by 3 developers. So similar situation to my own, actually. And they are doing their best. And they are pretty much also doing it still as a side project, so not as their main job, because the donations that they get for this project do not scale to a level yet where they can afford even one full-time developer, let alone 3. That being said, I was really surprised how far it has come, because the last time I tried it, it was just before I came across Fusion 360 back in, that must have been 2016, I think. And back then I had, I wouldn't say it was a horrible experience, but it was a bit of a buggy one, because the thing was constantly crashing and trying to do a fillet and boom, the whole workbench was gone, and be happy if you saved. And now it's, after fiddling a bit around with UI mods that are happily available and readily available in the community and perfectly well maintained, and working myself through a bunch of tutorials, I would say I'm almost up at the old speed of my old speed of Fusion 360 after less than a week.
Okay.
Yeah.
Less than a week of after our fiddling, so it's not like I sat down during my whole workday and worked with that, but I just did some cut practice pieces, and it still has some issues with filleting. So that is something where I would definitely say it has a huge room of improvement, but it's also a known issue. So they have these endless threads about that on their forums. But for the stuff that I use it for, which is primarily designing some tools or whatnot around the house for 3D printing after, for me it completely suffices, and I would consider myself now switched over. Okay. I still have a Fusion 360 personal license, and I'm not going to delete my account, because I figure if I run into some problem and I immediately need a solution and I know how to do it in that I can still fire it up and just solve the problem now and worry about how to do it in FreeCAD later. But all in all, I'm really happy. And I think, the more people who give this a chance now and also contribute both in code and financially, the better chance this tool has to become a really full-fledged competitor, or rather a full-fledged alternative. I mean, look at what happened to Blender, for example. That also is an open source project, and it's like majorly polished. Yeah,
and that is actually the thing that I wrote down before we started recording here. We know FreeCAD isn't, or first of all, it doesn't do everything that something like Fusion 360 does as of today, and it's also not as polished. Like, the interface isn't all that great, and I'm reading about issues with the feature history if you edit stuff earlier on and then the features don't rebuild properly. But all that aside, do you think that by adding money into the project, by giving them more contributions, that FreeCAD has the chance to get to a point, that it is generally competitive to Fusion 360 in a way that Blender is competitive? Or can it even do that without a full-time developer really committing 100% of their time into the project?
From my personal experience with OctoPrint, I would say that just doing something like this as a side project does only scale so much. At some point, you need to enable the developers to really concentrate fully on something, because it's not just that you have less time. There is also this constant focus shift. When I was still doing OctoPrint as a side project, it was all the day I was doing corporate development in the Java world, and then at night I switched over into Python and JavaScript and trying to move this project forward while I was actually already drained from the day and not really able to focus anymore and all that. So being able to now concentrate fully on stuff and worrying only about that and not having to have a whole other job on the side as well, that really, really helps. And I think if there was the amount of money for the FreeCAD project that would enable them to do something like this, maybe even hire more people and also get more code contributions in the process and designers and all that, because the usual problem that you also have with open source software is it's operated by software engineers. Like, hello, I'm a software engineer. I have no idea about UI design. The only thing that I've ever learned about that is basically self-taught by using stuff and learning what works and what doesn't. And I'm trying to make the best that I can with this kind of knowledge. But obviously someone who learned human-computer interaction design is way better at that than me.
Or just a difference between a user who actually spends their day working with the software, as in, some engineer, somebody who does the actual drawings in a tool like FreeCAD, versus somebody who programs the tool. They're obviously going to spend different amounts of time using or programming. Like if you're a user, you're not going to spend that much time programming it, and if you're a programmer, you're not going to spend that much time using it. So your idea of how the program should look like might be way different from the idea that somebody who spends many more hours in the software maybe.
You also, as a developer, you also get this kind of tunnel view, because you know your software, right? You know what button to press, and you know what works and what doesn't, and in what order you have to do certain things. And it's totally natural and intuitive to you. But someone who uses your software for the very first time might just sit in front of it and be like, what, why, where, huh? And it's really hard for a developer to see these problem points, because you're just so used to it. It's the same when I try to write end-user facing documentation. I'm at a point where I'm saying I would love to have something like that for OctoPrint, but I'm not the person to do it, because I have a way too technical view on everything. I tried it a bunch of times, tried to write at least something like a getting started guide, and I always lost myself in all the technical details and assumed stuff was known that probably isn't, and on the other hand then left out stuff that or went into too much detail on stuff where the average person is like, I don't care about this, just tell me what button to press. And so
how are you doing that with OctoPrint right now? Is that all community contributed on a wiki format for documentation and all that?
The documentation that currently exists on OctoPrint, or at least on docs.octoprint.org, is primarily the technical developer documentation. And that is what, I have probably like 95% or so of that I have written. The guides that we collect on the forums now, a lot of those are community contributed. And of course, there's also various YouTube channels and other places all around the web where there is a ton of knowledge collected. And I also try to get people to post these into the forums so that we have one space where you can find links at least, or at the minimum links, preferably though the full content of guides and all that, so that it is discoverable and it is searchable and all that. But this is also a bit of a tricky thing to get people to do.
What importance do you actually see in this documentation? Is this something you just think should be there just for completion, or is this also something that is necessary for people really to get started in using OctoPrint?
Which kind of documentation? So the one that I write, or the
well, not the one that you write, but the one that is probably lacking at the moment. The how to get started.
Yeah, well, let me put it this way. I see the kind of questions that we get in the support section on the forums, and this is always, on it, not always, but it's a lot of it is the same kind of problems that people run into, the same things. And a lot of that, I think, is also covered by the FAQ. So the people who search might find it in there, but still, I think if there was I think if on docs.octoprint.org there was actually like a full user manual, like with this button does this setting can achieve that, and all that, that would help a lot of people who now are completely blind. And I've had it so often that people request a feature that's already in there because they just couldn't find it. And yeah, so I realize, these things make me realize that there is a lack of good documentation still. But it also, it's a bit frustrating because I know I cannot contribute that stuff as much as I want to. And even if I found the time to do it, which I also don't see happening, to be honest. But yeah, I simply have the wrong viewpoint for that to happen.
Yeah, I keep seeing more and more parallels between the 3D printer community and world and the quadcopter and autonomous aerial vehicle community, because it is very similar. Like, it started out as a very open source, very community focused community, got eaten up by Chinese companies who are now basically making all the parts. Some software is going closed source, like the BL Heli, the firmware that runs on ESCs, on speed controllers, that used to be an open source project, and now it's a paid closed source, online only. Basically, whenever you use the configurator, it checks for the license on that one device that you can even use the configurator. Weird, but people are accepting that. And yeah, there is still a very community-driven spirit in the entire community. There's a lot of YouTube documentation. There is good documentation on the firmware that runs on the actual flight controllers, so the brains of drones and stuff. And yeah, that they're also trying to figure out a way where it's where you can use user-generated content in a wiki format, but also have some official de facto documentation from the developers that is going to be accurate. Because when the community produces something, obviously there might be issues, there might be inaccuracies even just that then lead to false assumptions. The entire quadcopter community is like 5 years ahead of the 3D printer community, I think, just in how things are progressing and developing. It's a really nice portal looking into what could be a future for 3D printing.
Well, let's hope we don't get this lockdown proprietary closed source stuff then, because no, I don't want that.
Well, probably one of the reasons was that some of the software that was developed wasn't really funded, and people were making that in their spare time, and at some point they decided that they had to go that way just to, I don't know, keep buying bread. And I hope that the funding for you and also for Marlin and other software that is around stays more in the hands of maybe the community, and people are saying, okay, I'm okay spending a couple of bucks every month to support the development in order that the software stays open. So hopefully it doesn't get into that direction, and hopefully you still get you still have a lot of funding to do what you're doing, and we remain that way and maybe are at a better position in 5 years.
Let's hope for the best. By the way, also what you mentioned, Tom, about community contributed documentation, which oftentimes cannot or is not necessarily completely accurate. This is also a pain point that I have with OctoPrint, because I have it so often now that users come into the forum and are like, I followed this and that tutorial on the internet, and now this and that is not working. And I'm like, well, yeah, you're using a tutorial that dates back 4 years. Stuff has changed since then. You're not supposed to do it like that anymore. And actually, the official way to do it is this, and it's even documented maybe. But I have no idea yet how to solve this problem, because how do I get people to not follow outdated information from someone and instead follow the official stuff?
So you tell me I should be updating my video, or at least take it
No,
offline.
you are actually not even that bad of an offender.
Not
in
even
that
that bad.
So,
Whew.
I think the current video is still from
18, I think.
18?
At least.
Okay, in that
20, 26, I think 16, because I think my second video that I made on my channel was also involving
I've
OctoPrint,
updated that
and
video.
yours was even
So I've done an old one that I've updated that I think in
Okay.
2018. So it might just be time to do a 2020 or 2021 version.
Yeah, because I mean, the thing is, yeah, OctoPrint basically still more or less works the same, but Octopi changes a bit here and there because we have to. Octopi depends on what the Raspbian Foundation, the Raspberry Pi Foundation puts out with regards to the base image, and so when they change stuff in the Wi-Fi driver and all that, we had to change how the Wi-Fi is set up, for example, and that means you now have to edit another file, and we put the old file on there, which tells you do not edit this file, edit the other file, but still sometimes, you know.
People are just.
But
people.
this is something where you would actually say, if you would have enough funding, you could either source work like that out, or have somebody really dedicated do that, who has maybe a different view on the project or on
Possibly.
what's happening.
I've never been in the position that I've been able to even consider hiring someone because, yeah, the funding is definitely not there for that. But yeah, I mean, I could hire documentation writers, I could hire graphic designers, I could hire dialogue, UI people and all that. So yeah, of course. I mean, if there was bigger funding, I could do a whole bunch of stuff. I could also hire more developers so I don't have to do everything on my own and actually can outsource maintenance to someone else maybe and concentrate more on adding new features, which right now is a bit of a problem because, yeah.
But
go ahead.
Sorry, Tom.
Okay.
No, go ahead.
I think that level of, hey, this is a project that works with me as a one-man show, breaking out of that and actually
woman.
So, sorry. Everyone always assumes you're a man, right?
Yeah, I know. This is why I was just very, very prompted to correct you there because I'm not. Surprise.
Yeah, maybe we can quickly jump on that. Yeah, Stefan has correct in the notes as well. But so that point of jumping from a one-person show onto now being a team of people. I find that is very difficult. I'm at that point too. I've hired my mom part-time to do accounting and you know the administrative stuff that I don't have to do myself. But with stuff like community funding, Patreon, right? I feel that there's an impression that, oh, this person is getting X amount and that's got to be enough, right? There's no need to contribute to that person anymore. That's a good living that they're getting. Or, oh, yeah, they're making enough cash from other sources now that I don't have to So you're kind of walking against the wall there, and you're going to have to find alternative ways of not just funding, funding what you do essentially. On YouTube, yes, sponsorships are that exactly the way we can move past that barrier, or just getting the channel more popular, getting more views. That also brings in more funding. But how do you do that for an open source project?
I'll tell you if I find out.
Yeah,
but this was
because I don't know. I don't have an answer here. I fear because what I've seen, the most open source projects once they hit the wall, they either get bought up by a company, by the people or the person doing it getting hired to work on this stuff full time, which is funnily enough how I started doing this full time, and then I went. So basically, I went the other way. But yeah, and the other way around is they join some of the huge open source foundations and get funding through that, and maybe get more and then better access also to development resources and other kinds of resources like that. This is also actually something that I at one time want to look into, just not necessarily to do it, but just to figure out how this works and if this is an option for OctoPrint or not, because I've had at least the people from when I gave this talk at the KDE conference, the virtual KDE conference earlier this year, some people in the audience asked like, have you thought about joining the KDE Foundation? And I was like, I didn't even know this was an option, and I have no idea what that would mean, and I don't know if they even want me. So I don't know.
Yeah.
I can't say.
Background information for those viewers or listeners not familiar with how the Linux desktop environment works. KDE is basically what you see on your screen, the desktop environment. On
one version of that. There is also GNOME, and there's also XFCE.
Yes. It is one type of desktop environment that you could use on top of GNU Linux. And yeah, they're not the most popular one, I guess, with Ubuntu using. I guess it's their own shell now, right? It's not.
Yeah, they are using, I think, Cinnamon. Is it? It's called Unit. I have no idea how it's called. I haven't used Linux on a desktop for a while now, I gotta admit, so I'm a bit behind on current development.
Yeah, but that's an interesting corner of the open source world, that you would fit in with a desktop environment, and OctoPrint. What's the common point there? How would the KDE Foundation fit in with OctoPrint?
As far as I understand, KDE is actually not only doing the desktop environment anymore. So the whole foundation is apparently also helming, or rather umbrellaing. Is this a word? Can I use this as a word?
Know what you mean,
Well,
we make up words all the time.
Open source projects which aren't necessarily desktop focused. So it's more like, Linux focused, or maybe just it's open source, so why not? I mean, take a look maybe also at the Apache Foundation. They originally were, as far as I understand, the people who made the Apache web server, and now they do play, or they are a wrapper for a whole bunch of open source software, from databases to machine learning stuff to logging frameworks to whatnot. So I guess stuff just evolves, and it might be something like that. I have no idea. As I said, I have not really looked into that, so I don't know if I would even fit. So I can't possibly tell you at the moment how that would work, because no chance yet to research.
Well, maybe another question concerning or regarding funding. One of the things that I always ask myself is why we don't find OctoPrint as a really nice online tool to access my 3D printer, not directly integrated on more 3D printers, like right out of the box. Is this something you are not interested in, or you don't think OctoPrint is really suitable for, or is this just something where companies didn't approach you? Because on many professional 3D printers, you often see a Repetier host with I don't know, some custom UI over it. Would there be a place for OctoPrint also on professional 3D printers, and even on more maker, more cheaper 3D printer at the moment, since mainboards are getting more and more powerful? Mainboards are might have the capability to also run OctoPrint directly on it in the future. Is this something where you could see OctoPrint, or is this something you don't really want to get into?
That's absolutely something that I want to get into. The problem is that so far, apart from BQ, so a big tree tech, the BIQO, not the old one, right? Not the old one, not the other one, not the Spanish one, but the Chinese one. Apart from them, who are now pushing their new Kickstarter printer with full integration and all that, which I'm actually hoping to get my own look at some point. I haven't yet had a lot of interested 3D vendors. So I don't know if you remember when the Prusa Mark III launched. Mm-hmm. And with this big announcement, we can mount a Raspberry Pi Zero W on the INSI board and run OctoPrint off of that. I learned about that from the press release.
That's not great.
If I had not learned about that from the press release, I would also have told them that it is a really, really bad idea to make place for the Raspberry Pi Zero W because it's really, really seriously underpowered. And as soon as you make any kind of traffic on the Wi-Fi NIC, the whole Wi-Fi driver eats CPU cycles for breakfast. So there is not much left to actually run a print job, which is why ever since I found this issue with the Zero, I've always been like, do not use it for OctoPrint. And ever since the Mark III released, I always get these support issues on the forums now, like, yeah, but Prusa says it works. Like, yeah, but they did not write it. I did. And I tell you, it doesn't work. And if they had asked me, I would have told them that's a bad idea. So, yeah, I have no idea why not more, why printer companies in general are not more trying to bundle OctoPrint. I certainly am not against that. The only thing that I would in such a case obviously hope for is to also get some kind of sponsoring from that company, because if they bundle my product and rely on this product to continue working, maybe they should make sure it gets developed. But right?
I mean, you can't force that, right?
No, I'm not. I'm also not saying that I want to force that, and I have an open source license, and this also includes that they may use it commercially, and I'm standing behind that. Yeah. The only thing is there is a legal component, there is a moral component, and there's also a business logical component. I should, or at least I personally, I myself, I would not want to build my business or even a product of my business up on something that I cannot at least make sure that it continues to work, or at least that I try to keep working for the foreseeable future. Because that's just, for me, that is an illogical thing to do.
Might be good for business. I mean, planned obsolescence and all that is a, fantastic driver for new purchases. I know that One Click Metal actually have an interface on the machine that is based on OctoPrint, and supposedly are also working with you. So that is a sort of interface that does not look like OctoPrint anymore. I've not seen the very most recent one, but it runs OctoPrint in the background, and they've worked with you. And how did that work out?
Let's just say we're in contact, and I hope that something will actually, in the end, also come out of that financially, but so far it hasn't.
Startups.
But that's understandable because they are still ramping up and all that. So this is something that we agreed on. So that's not like they did not know. That's just
Okay.
I actually hope everything is fine with the guys. I haven't heard from them in a while.
Maybe you could have seen them at Formnext if it would.
That was also one of the reasons why I was there last year and the year before that, in order to talk over some stuff with them. Yeah.
So well, I think you see more and more Wi-Fi and network integration on 3D printers over the last, I don't know, 1 or 2 years. Most of them are horrible. And this was actually one of the reasons why I was hoping to see OctoPrint being integrated in there more and more. There is the Creality Wi-Fi box currently being developed and handed out to a bunch of testers.
I have one here as well somewhere.
But I was hoping for a really nice integration, even though I was scared that it could potentially take people that use that box from OctoPrint. But I have tried it out for, I don't know, a couple of hours. It wasn't really working that properly. I'm not really happy with it. So this is really something where I don't know why companies try to develop their own stuff. Well, I kind of see the reason behind that. And why not contribute to a project like OctoPrint, help you grow, help you make the software even better than it is at the moment, and then kind of integrate it in their products and making them all also more user-friendly and adding features.
Yep. My current guess is that it's a problem of not having control in that case, because they are using some. I mean, yeah, they might actually already be using something in the background and not really share about that. I'm not pointing any fingers here. I can just imagine that maybe, considering how many OctoPrint screens I saw here and there at Formnext, there are companies actually using it without me knowing about it. And they do not control it, obviously. And I can also vouch here and now that there will never be one single company that controls OctoPrint unless I'm the boss of that company, because the goal here is to build something that you can use with I cannot say every printer, because if the printer has a proprietary interface, right? But the goal is to make it usable with as many printers out there as possible, regardless of who sold you that printer and who manufactured that printer. And I do not want to yield that control to one company that then might lock it down in some way.
Yeah, control is probably a good point, because also on like more professional 3D printers that other companies, that other companies sell at a price which is not for a maker, they also usually bundle Simplify 3D with it, because they can control, or they can kind of control Simplify 3D more, because it doesn't get any updates anymore in comparison to bundling it with Cura or Prusa Slicer or something like that, because also because they don't have control. They don't have control if things change, if features change, and stuff like that. So yeah, could be actually one of the reasons, but I don't know if there could be possibilities to have a specific, I don't know, stable branch that doesn't get updated as often or something like that. I don't know how that usually works.
I mean, in principle, they could always just fork it and then pull in whatever they want from the new developments and leave out everything else. That would definitely be less work than developing their own. But I don't know. A lot of my impression is just they do not want to do that for some reason. I also have the plug-in interface, so if they want their custom UI and if they want to lock down certain stuff or extend certain stuff, they can do that with their own development without having to fear that with the next OctoPrint update it will vanish. But still, the only two companies that I know of who actually made use of that are Mr. Beam with the laser cutter.
In the background.
And also Leapfrog for a while with one of their units. But I don't know why so many 3D printer vendors rather tinker or cobble together their own instead of using established stuff. Also, they would also immediately profit from all the interoperability. I mean, the Cura has the plugin that allows you to push immediately to an OctoPrint instance on your network. Prusa has the same thing, Prusa Slicer. You can use a ton of third-party clients now for displays and also for your phone and all that, all utilizing the OctoPrint API. So actually, there is a bit of of motivation to use this stuff.
It might just be that, having OctoPrint, something that everyone can use, is not a unique selling point. That it's not like, oh, we've got this cool new Wi-Fi box that you can now buy from us. I think that just sells better than, oh, we've created a Raspberry Pi and plugged an SD card with OctoPi into it. It might just be a...
Good. I mean, in the case of Creality, one could also say, if they control the thing that communicates with their firmware, it isn't so bad that their firmware constantly has weird issues in the protocol. But
on the topic of issues and manufacturers possibly forking OctoPrint, I know you're running Home Assistant for your own smart home and for your internet connected devices, which I think for you are not that internet connected, but do you see that issue of people just getting Raspberry Pis, throwing an OctoPi build on there, and then just neglecting it and creating that well-known Internet of Shit phenomenon where there's dozens of devices that are unsecured or port forwarded onto the internet. I mean, we've seen that.
Oh God, port forwarding.
Is that something that you're concerned with more and more people using OctoPrint?
I mean, I'm not really worried about it as long as they're only using it on their own network, because usually your average run-of-the-mill J-random user with a 3D printer does not run OctoPrint in a corporate environment or in an environment or in a network where there are a lot of people they don't know connecting to it and looking for vulnerabilities, right? But the things change significantly when they hear on some YouTube channel video or on some how-to tutorial thing or something, hey, and you can easily access it from anywhere just by configuring your router to forward to port 80, and no one but you will be able to access it. And no, this is wrong. The second that you put an IP up on the internet, it will be scanned. All the ports will be scanned. They will happily be logged, the services that run on that, and it is searchable via stuff like Shodan.io. And I know that because I also occasionally take a look at stuff there. And it's really, really worrying how many people do expose their OctoPrint instance on the public internet. And as you just mentioned, my Home Assistant is not available on the public internet. Because in my opinion, a physical device which runs in my home and might also have access to heaters or light or whatnot, like really physical manifestations, that simply does not belong on the internet. No matter how good, how well secured it is. I mean, personally, I know I do my best with OctoPrint to make the access control as tight as it can be, but still, I'm a human. I can make errors. I use third-party libraries. They are done by humans. They can produce errors. So I would not want to entrust the health of my printer and by extension of everything around it, because again, heaters, to code that is supposed to keep the bad guys out that have nothing better to do than trying to get in.
Plus, I mean, you're assuming that people are actually using the password feature.
Yeah, that is also one of the problems that I cannot wrap my head around.
Like.
It tells you when you are asked to please create a password, it tells you to please create a password if you plan to put it on anything but a network that you trust. Even like I think it even says in parentheses like the public internet. And then at the end of the wizard, it again tells you, and please do not connect it to the internet, and also do not leave it unattended because bad idea and all that. And then I still get people that post something about my OctoPrint instance was hacked. Hey, yeah, did you expose it on the net? Yes, I did.
Here's an idea.
Why?
It's technically possible to detect that, right? I'm
actually already doing it, that I detect when an OctoPrint instance is accessed from an IP that is not one of the regular local network ones. And in that case, you get a really annoying message popped up on the UI, even if you have access control enabled. So you get this regardless of whether you have it enabled or not. Because, it just basically tells you, again, here, you wouldn't put your fridge on the net. Maybe you should also not put your printer on the net.
Well, people do put their fridges on the net, but...
Yeah, but that's a bad idea.
It is, yeah.
The only thing that I cannot do is basically deny port forwards, because first of all, I cannot reliably detect that enough to be able to shut it off. And then again, this is also, that is a point where I would say OctoPrint would interfere too much with stuff.
Yeah.
It could be a port forward that is additionally locked down with a VPN or something. So
There, for example, from MSI Afterburner, I know there's or used to be, I don't know if it's still in there, if you wanted to access the advanced voltage controls for overclocking your graphics card, you would have to add a line to a config file that you found in a Windows hidden away folder, and that was like, I know what I'm doing or something. So obviously all the
I'm laughing because if you want to run OctoPrint as the root user, so the super user which has all the rights and can control the whole system under Linux, then you have to supply it with the command line option. I know what I'm doing.
yeah. So I don't know. The question that I'm getting to basically is how much, and I know this is quite a jump. How much time do you think is worth spending on trying to keep the user from hurting themselves versus actually trying to keep the software from moving forward and adding new features? Because honestly, it kind of feels like OctoPrint has been good for a while and it's done everything I needed for, I don't know, the last 3 or 4 years. And as a user, as an occasional user, I gotta say, it's not feeling like there's really that much being pushed into the software, and it's not moving at the rapid paces that it once did. How are you balancing those two interests?
It's a tough one, I have to say, because this is exactly the question that I have to ask myself a whole lot when I go through the forums and all that. How much of my time, of my limited time, should I use to keep users from shooting themselves into the foot versus adding stuff for everyone? And yeah, I don't have a general answer for you here because it's something that I more or less rely on my gut for. If it's something like this whole port forwarding situation, I look at it from the point of view that OctoPrint is not a network security appliance. It's a server that you run on your network. It will warn you if you are trying to access it from remote, because that's a bad idea, but it will still allow you to use it in that scenario. And if you are making the conscious decision to ignore every single piece of warning that I throw at you during the setup and then during use, then sorry, but then you're out of luck. Then my hands are clean. I'm not responsible for anything that happens to your printer anymore. So yeah, that is one thing. Then there, of course, always is the question. I have this huge plugin ecosystem that can interact with OctoPrint, and a lot of the time that I now spend on OctoPrint is actually spent on trying to make the hooks inside OctoPrint more error resilient, so that some plugin that you install from somewhere cannot nuke your whole instance. That is stuff that you usually do not see as an end user, but which allows plugin developers to, or rather, which allows less experienced plugin developers still to contribute stuff, because they will learn, hopefully will learn to interact with the platform in a way that doesn't cause issues by getting hints from the platform itself. Here is a bad idea because, but yeah, it's tricky.
So you're basically working on turning OctoPrint into a 3D printer operating system, more or less, where
at this point, yes, because the thing is, what I noticed quite early on, even before this became a full-time job, is I cannot develop every single feature that people might want. I mean, maybe I can develop it, but I cannot then maintain all of this along the years, over the years as well. That starts at the sheer volume of stuff, and of course, there's also the problem that usually, if there's something hardware specific, I don't necessarily even have the hardware at question that the whatever someone wants to interact with. Which is why back in 2015, I built in this whole plugin interface so that people can just maintain whatever they want themselves and provide it to the community themselves and keep it up to date and everything. And I don't have to take care of that. But with that came the whole challenge of making the platform stable, making it error resilient, making it, also putting in stuff that allows me to work around plugin issues should they arise. Also situations like now where we have this migration from Python 2 to Python 3 and some plugins turn out to be abandoned. Now I suddenly found myself in the situation that I had to tell people, hey, you're running an old version of the plugin. Someone else has forked it and is now maintaining it, but your version of the plugin cannot update itself. So you have to reinstall it from there, please, and stuff like this. So this is all stuff that came with this decision to go for a plugin system. And I still do not regret the decision because I think it is one of the, if not the power features of OctoPrint to be able to extend it. Yeah. But from a maintainer point of view, damn, did it make things complicated.
Yeah, you don't just have to account for your own errors, you have to account for everyone else's errors as well.
Yes, and you also have to make sure that while you account for everyone else's errors, and also while you maybe smash some bugs in your own code, you have to make sure that the whole interface while you're doing it stays stable, because otherwise you will break an ecosystem. So I cannot just correct a typo in an API method or something, for example.
Yeah. Just mark it as deprecated and depreciated, and it's like,
yep.
Don't use this anymore. Use the. I mean, we usually get or I think I've registered for YouTube API key at some point, and you usually get the emails. Oh, by the way, we're shutting down this version 2 API in 3 months. Mm-hmm. Good luck.
Mm-hmm. And that's about the only thing I can do as well. So
basically. So
it's fun.
With all this maintenance, do you actually still get to 3D printing stuff for
Rarely.
yourself for fun?
Rarely. When I do, it's usually either on a weekend or during vacation. When it's actually stuff, I should add, that is not just a test cube or something, because I sometimes I change things in the communication layer, and I have to make sure that it still works with a real printer after I have checked it against the virtual printer. But I always find this a bit funny when I think about it. So, I mean, I got a 3D printer in late 2012. Then I wrote OctoPrint to be able to use it better. And then OctoPrint took over my life, and now I don't even get to use my 3D printers anymore that much because of that. And it's kind of hilarious, actually, if you think about it. I also wrote OctoPrint to be able to put my 3D printer in the spare bathroom. And now I have 3 3D printers next to me in my office. So something somehow went wrong there. But in a right way.
I think it's kind of the same thing for us as well, or at least for me.
I totally print for fun all the time. Absolutely. Can't you hear all the printers going?
Yeah, since the point where 3D printing kind of became your job, you don't have the time anymore to use it for hobby things, for doing bigger projects with it, because I don't know, or you just want to do something else than working with 3D printers.
That's more the case for me, I think, because I also noticed that I do not, ever since I started working from home, from my own office here, I noticed that my video gaming time on the PC has gone down significantly, because after I've spent like 8 hours in this office working, the last thing I want to do is spend another 3 or 4 hours going through my Steam library. So these days it's more like the PS4 or the Switch or something on the couch, which is a bit sad because I have so many good games here.
Friends of mine also tell me that if they're working all day in the office, they don't have they don't want to game at the PC anymore. I don't know. I still enjoy gaming around here, and I actually took off, I think, Friday last week and finally played through Mafia Definitive Edition, or how it's called. It was great, and it was just okay. Today and tomorrow I'm not going to work. I'm just enjoying that, and I think this is also something which kind of goes in hand with the 3D printing question. You kind of, if you have something on your mind, don't try to do it at the end of the day where you have already spent 8 or 10 hours working on 3D printing problems. Just use your 3D printer at the weekend or in your holiday where you have, I think, a more open mind for projects like that, and you can finally start enjoying it again, and it's not this thing that just pays the bills.
Yeah. Though, I mean, in my case, it's not necessarily the 3D printing itself that pays the bills, but still, it's like, no, I just want to leave this room and do something else and not spend more time in this room.
But Gina, I mean, you're really good with work-life balance and actually running your self-employment more as I don't know, a managed job essentially. I'm really struggling with that. Stefan has obviously some experience with having a ton of projects going on at the same time. Regular job, kid, family, and YouTube. For those listening that are looking into something similar or doing something self-employed, what have been your breakthrough moments in realizing, hey, I gotta manage this?
I think the breakthrough moment per se doesn't exist, but it was more like a sneaking suspicion that I had to create really, really hard boundaries in order to be able to actually switch off at the end of the day. Because I noticed if I did not have fixed business, or not fixed, but like regular business hours that were when I worked, and anything outside of these business hours where I don't work, then my head was just still constantly trying to fix a bug or something like that, or mulling over a ticket and trying to figure out stuff. And this still happens. So this is not like this is a complete switch off, but it's less invasive now to being able to actually shut off. And I noticed that if I'm not able to shut off, then it really happens very, very fast that I get back close to the first signs of a burnout. And I have experienced, or I have come close to an actual burnout in my career once, and I do not want to have this experience again. It's not only a really, really draining and depressing thing, but also it is a scary thought that you start hating what you actually love the most. I mean, I love developing, I love writing code. I've been doing this since I was 7 years old, so it's a part of me. And not being able to do that anymore because my whole brain is just like, can't compute, do not want, go away. And me really feeling bad every time I have to do it is not a feeling that I want in my life. So in order to prevent this from happening, I think that I owe it to myself, and I also owe it to every single supporter of OctoPrint and every single user of OctoPrint to be able to keep doing this with a smile on my face, or at least most of the time. Of course, there are days where the smile is more like a frown, or a very, very angry look. But in order to do that, I needed to find a way that is sustainable. And the way that it is sustainable for me is to actually have regular office hours, to have a very strict day timetable thing, kind of. Actually, I mean, there are some days I still take advantage of working from home, for example, when I need to make a dentist appointment, or when I need to have the tires on my car changed or something like that, because it's way easier to get an appointment during the regular work hours of everyone else than doing that in the off times as well. But still, most of my days are very structured in a way that I have like I try to start around 9:30, and I try to drop my hammer around 5:30. And there are days where I don't do that. There are days where I start later or earlier. There are days where I end later or earlier. There are also days where I definitely go past the 10-hour mark of work. But there are also days where I'm really not able to focus or something. And then instead of building bugs into the code, I rather say, okay, today is not a good day. Now I rather do, in that case, I either do accounting, or I just say, okay, YouTube it is, right?
And it at first when you start thinking about, hey, I'm not as productive as I want to be, or I'm not feeling this as much as I wanted, it seems counterintuitive that you have to actually force yourself to stop working, or to take time off, or to limit your exposure to work to actually be more productive then. It's something that I've not figured out yet, that I'm really struggling with. But it's something that, you probably should be looking into earlier than, rather should be looking into it earlier than too late.
Definitely. Burnout ain't fun. What really drove this home for me was back in, I think that was early 2018, or was it even 2019? I'm not entirely sure yet if it's 2 or 1 years ago. Anyhow, I noticed that I was getting sick way more often than I used to. And after thinking about it a bit here and there and realizing, well, I'm not traveling with public transport every day, so I cannot catch it there. Whatever I'm catching here, I'm not going grocery shopping that often, so it's not from there. So whatever's happening here means my immune system is shot. So why is this? And a gut feeling told me maybe it's the stress. So what I decided back then was, just as a test balloon, to reduce my daily hours from 8 to 7 for a month. See how I felt, see how this impacted my productivity, just see how it felt, what it did. And what I realized was I reduced the numbers, the hours that I worked each day, and my productivity increased, and the level of sickness or the level of health issues that I experienced also dialed back, which was the point where I realized, okay, I'm staying at this.
Yeah.
I'm going to keep doing that, because apparently it's a good idea to do that. No one, I mean, in our heads, we have this, or at least, us Germans maybe have this idea that we have to work 8 hours a day at a minimum and 40 hours a week because everyone does it. And we have to do that between this and this hour of the day because everyone does it. But if you figure out, or if you realize, hey, if I work 1 hour less per day, and I also maybe shift my working hours a bit later because I tend to sleep longer when I don't get woken up by an alarm bell, and I feel better then compared to when I get woken up by an alarm bell, then do that if you have the possibility. And maybe if you do not need boundaries, like you don't need fixed regular working hours and off hours, if this works for you, this is also fine. The thing is, I think that you just have to experiment, you have to try it, you have to figure it out for yourself, because everyone is different, everyone works differently, everyone's creativity and productivity is influenced differently by a multitude of factors in their life. And for me, this is what I would currently say works best. That doesn't mean it works for anyone else.
No, I really envy you for that. For me, it's totally unregulated with normal work and just working from home and working at nights when the wife and the baby is sleeping and stuff like that. And I also noticed that this drains me from time to time, but I kind of always have this voice in my head that's telling me, okay, if you're not working now, you will not fail, but maybe not succeed as well, or something like that. And this is damaging from time to time. And just as you said, I also from time to time feel that I'm not as healthy as I actually should be. And it's hard, but it's still hard for me to really take the time off. But when I do that, it helps. I don't know. It's just my brain is not letting me do that often.
Maybe it helps you to know that. Sorry, just a quick one. When I started doing this in a self-employment scenario, every single time that I got sick or that something kept me from working for more than 2 days straight, so I don't know, like a cold or something where I had to help some relatives or something like that, a vacation, things like that, I always felt bad, and I always felt like I had to justify that to my patrons. So I called in sick to work on Patreon. And after a while of thinking about why I did this, I realized it was just because I had this feeling that I was letting people down. Because I'm not on my desk working, but instead I'm feverish on the couch, trying to breathe through my nose. And when I realized this, I realized that, most of these people are probably supporting me, not so that I can output as fast as possible while completely ignoring anything that goes on in my life and my own health and all that. But instead, they are supporting me because they like what I do and they want to see me keep doing that. So from that perspective, I need to make sure that I can keep doing that, which means I need to take care of myself first and foremost. So I have a very strong focus these days on self-care. Also after, let's say, a not so fun breakup, which also taught me some things about that. And it's really driven home some points for myself. And I also notice a huge positive impact on my general feeling and personal health, both mental and physical. So, but it is work, and it is not something that happens from day to day. It's something that you really have to try to figure out why you keep having thoughts like that, and try to find the source of them, and then see what you can do about that, and not force yourself to do anything, because that just will backfire.
Yeah, that hamster wheel feeling, I think is really is something that self-employed folks probably experience a lot more than people who have regular working hours. For me, I hated university because I always had that feeling of, oh, you should be studying. If you're not studying right now, you are messing up, you're losing out, you could be doing better than you are. Don't do that thing you actually enjoy because you should be studying right now. I hated that. Then I got a regular job. It didn't last too long. I mean, BQ and all, but I had a regular 9-to-5 job for about a year, and that was actually pretty relaxing. Like you went to work in the morning. If you got up early, you got out at 4. And you go home and you just don't give a flying pig about what's happened at work or what's going to happen the next day. It's just like, okay, I'm home now, everything's over, I'll go back tomorrow. At least I was able to. It's when you work in a corporation, big corporate, and you see you don't have control over things anyways. It's like, why am I even trying? Like I'm going to do my job the best I can, but I'm not going to care about it. That's the feeling I had, and I went home and it was fine. But the self-employment thing, it's all coming back. That entire management thing, or time management thing, is something you have to do yourself at that point again. Yeah.
I envy you for that experience, because I've always been a workaholic. I never could just go home and like that. It didn't work. So even when I was still a corporate drone, it was always feeling responsibility for all of that stuff and taking it home. And that is also why I had to really early start learning how to switch off, right, how to keep work at work because of this. Because I've always, also during university and all that, I was always just work. And I would call myself a recovering alcoholic, right, Gina? Perfect. Which most people do not know that. I mean, I think you do, you two do, but I do not drink alcohol, so this is especially funny now. Especially a recovering workaholic, So I've been in the workforce now since 2007, so the past 13 years. So it took me about 13 years to get to this point mentally. Just to put some perspective maybe on that.
Some good experience under your belt. For sure.
Now
yeah, so I guess anything else we've missed? I guess thank you for making the time in your calendar for us.
Welcome. It was fun.
And for taking the hour and for leaving us with some good life lessons here. Stefan, thanks for being here as well. Obviously, Gina, where can people find you, support your work? What's the one thing you wish people would do more of to make your life easier or to support your work?
There's only one I'm allowed to say.
Yeah, but
Well, so first of all, anything that you want to ever, every piece of information about OctoPrint that there is basically, and every link that is important here is octoprint.org, because there the documentation is linked, the plugin repository is linked, the support page is linked, which you can also find at support.octoprint.org, and there you can find ways to support me financially. Various ways, by the way, not just Patreon. I've expanded a bit. And the one thing that I wish more people did to make my life easier, I guess that would be to read what is already there and, use the search function of the forums. But I would also expand this a bit to a second thing, maybe, because at the very start, we talked about how it is to have so many people testing your software and all that. You remember? And the thing is, OctoPrint actually does have a release candidate system. And before I push out a stable release of OctoPrint to everyone out there, it's gone through several cycles of release candidates with people who have opted into helping to test the release candidates. And every time that I push out a stable release and I find some bug that someone reports like what feels like 2 minutes after I pushed out the release, I know that, okay, apparently this person has some printer combination, some workflow, something like that is not yet covered by the people running the release tests, the release candidates. So the more people who run these candidates, the better, which is why I just want to take the opportunity here and tell people again, you can help test release candidates of OctoPrint. All the info about that is on the forum. I also mentioned it in every single blog post on release candidates, which automatically get pushed to your OctoPrint instance. And it really, really helps to make each and every release a stable release, or as stable as possible release, because obviously I cannot test every printer firmware workflow combination under the sun. So the more people from the community chip in here and do their part and just run a test version and tell me if it's working or not, the better.
Perfect. All right, so all that is obviously going to be linked in the show notes below and on YouTube, obviously in the video description. Thank you both for taking the time. Take care. People, be nice to each other. And Stefan, I'll see you in 2 weeks. Gina, thanks for being here. Bye.
Thank you, Gina. Bye.
Bye.